Good evening, and welcome to the August 11th Kilva Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. We'll call this meeting to order, and if you would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on with our agenda, if you would join us for a moment of silence. As we start our moment of silence, I also would ask for you to please keep Kathy Miller, she's an employee with the town, in your thoughts and prayers as she continues her courageous fight with cancer. And with that, if you'll please join us for a moment of silence. Thank you. Okay. First up, we have agenda approval. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, next is the time, this is the first time this evening that's set aside for public comment. We have two different sessions. We have one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end of the meeting. This is the time where you can address the board on any item that you wish to address the board on or bring to the board's attention. We do ask if you're speaking as an individual that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, or if you're speaking on behalf of a group, if you could limit those comments to 5 minutes, please. We did have a sign-up sheet. I don't know if anyone signed up. They didn't, but that's okay. We'll call from the floor. So is there anyone that wishes to speak this evening at public comment? Yes, Jack, welcome. And when you do, if you are speaking, if you would go to the podium, please, and identify yourself by name and address when you speak. So, welcome, Jack.
Jack McCombs, 917 Cedar Drive, KDH, of course. I'm going to read something by a local cyclist, an experience he had on the beach road a few days ago. So if you'll bear with me. His name's David Camper. He's one of the best cyclists in the Outer Banks. I'm sure many of the people here know him. Last Thursday at 5:15 a.m. I was heading north on the beach road when at the entrance of the Hilton, a Tahoe cut me down. It was so dark I understand that the lady involved did not mean to do me harm, but she did in fact ruin my morning. I had just come out of a warm-up sprint and it slowed to 19 when I noticed her vehicle coming towards me. It did not have a turn signal on, so I was not concerned at this point. In fact, at this point, I was approximately 20 yards from it. I knew I had my front light on and also my rear blinker on, as I had passed 3 other vehicles on my commute that AM on the beach road. As I neared the Tahoe, I saw it move into the turning lane to begin its turn onto the Hilton parking lot. I yelled for them to notice me, but no luck. I hit my brakes, but a bike on 19 will not stop right on a dime. And now the Tahoe was within 5 feet of me, so my options were limited. I could go around the problem, stop if needed to avoid it, or jump the hood by unclipping and jumping up so you won't get rolled under. That's a technique that we are aware of, experienced cyclists. But a Tahoe is a big vehicle and he could not jump it. He realized that real fast. Or go into a slide to avoid head-on impact. Since it was so close, I knew my first 2 options were eliminated, and being a Tahoe, or in the dark, a truck up in the air somewhat, I knew my third option was out of the question as well. So I hit my brakes and began a slide, laying the bike on its side, staying clipped in to control my bike as best as I could, and grabbing the bumper as I went under the front end to avoid being run over by the wheels or dragged down the road. I have never practiced this, but in my head I have done it many times as I do this type of mental practice each time I ride. Upon the Tahoe stopping, the lady backed up for fear of running me over, since at that time I was actually under the front end of the Tahoe. So I let go of the bumper and laid myself on the ground to do a quick analysis of my body, which I found nothing hurting severely, and I could hear everything going on around me, so I knew I was alive. The lady whom hit me was panicking, so I tried to comfort her as quickly as I could and assure her I was going to be okay. At first I started to go on my way and let it be bygones, and then I realized what I was doing, so I stopped and asked her to call the police, mainly in case she denied the incident or had no insurance. The police arrived, we exchanged information, she was cited, I got her insurance info, and all went well. I can say she told me she never saw my light and may not have, but she had her mind on getting to the Kitty Hawk Pier for photography, so I can see where she overlooked me. She has since learned a lesson in talking to her. Actually, as I write this, she assured me she pays more attention now. So in all, we can do everything right and be in the right, but still things happen. A front page article telling motorists of our biking rights would be nice. Maybe even keep them from all of them from yelling at us, which is a common incident in the Outer Banks. I myself have been yelled at, cursed, I've been spit on, I have had things thrown on me. Twice in Duck, work vans came off the road onto the multi-use path to scare me, which they did. But in the end, people are going to do and behave as they wish or were bred to do. It is up to each of us to set an example and show humanity towards one another in order to make a change. But just bringing this to your attention, I want to applaud the police department. KDH Police Department, like the other police departments in the Outer Bank, are very sensitive to the rights of cyclists, and they do try and protect us. And they were very responsive to this incident. But this man could have been killed very easily. I don't have much of a suggestion except add what David says, Dan. The more publicity we can give to the rights of cyclists, I think the better off it will be for us. This lady sitting over here, Carrie O, she's a cyclist too, and I think she's experienced some unpleasant incidents out on the road. It's kind of common, which is a shame. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public comment time? Yes, yeah.
Al DeGeet, I live at 1000 Blue Jay Street. I'm just wondering, can we go back and reevaluate the decibel level on the noise? Because, I mean, granted, it's a 65, but 65, and they're saying that when they go down there, it's only at 61, and you can hear it 3 blocks away. It might, if we could readdress this to maybe bring it down to 55, even 50, because nighttime you're supposed to get some sleep, and you just can't. I don't know. Mike said he was, it was funny because the day Mike said he was going up to the pit, it mellowed out. But, I mean, Saturday night was another night where they had DJ outside, and you could hear the thumping music coming from inside. I went over there with my reader, and it was on 74, but they wouldn't tell me what theirs was reading, and it never went down. But I don't know if we can readdress it, because, I mean, I'd hate for something, you know, I mean, other bars, if they start this, I mean, you're going to get a lot more complaints. It's really loud. 61 is 3 blocks away. You can hear it. I don't know if you said that, hey, we'll start with this and readdress it if we have to, but we might have to readdress it. Mag's Head's at 57. I know theirs is 57 decibel reading, and we're at 65, and apparently we don't care about our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak at public comment? No? Okay. Seeing no other hands, we'll close public comment. In response to public comment, Jack, have you, I'm sure you have in the past, but even with the story that you shared with us tonight, been able to reach out to any of the local media, Coastland Times, Voice, Sentinel? It might be something that they might be, normally we have a representative here, he's not here tonight, and he's been so responsive at bringing up other issues and carrying them forward, but just a food for thought. Of course, by speaking on it now, it'll be televised here as our meetings are shown, and not only played on the Government Education Channel, but certainly on YouTube as well. So it's other ways to get awareness out there, but just as just as a thought, normally Philip's here and he could pick things up, but since he's not tonight, maybe interesting, having them do a cover story of a recent experience. Any other comments?
Yeah, I can't stand it when people don't use their turn signals. It's really, really irritating. So, I think it's also like just poor driving etiquette as well. And I don't know, maybe do all the cyclists cycle on the bike paths, or,
People on road bikes cannot go on that bike path. It's too dangerous for other users as well as the cyclists.
Why is that?
Going too
They're
fast.
moving at a much faster speed, and they're not bike paths, they're multi-use paths. So you can see all types of users there, including children, parents walking children. So you just cannot ride road bikes on those paths. In fact, in the Outer Banks, just so you understand, there is only one bike path, and that's from Byron's Cove down to the Midway intersection. That's the only bike path in the Outer Banks.
Gotcha.
I know, Jack, you may have heard me mention before that our son-in-law bikes regularly. He's been doing it for 20 years, and he's had those unpleasant incidents with people harassing him and stuff. Unfortunately, I know you know this, that any kind of awareness campaign is not going to affect people like that much. But as far as the other things go, I think we could make a lot more effort, not only us, but maybe something on our website, and as was mentioned, the media could possibly do something. And the laws in the state are that you have every right to be there as a car. And that's you have to use your signals, they have to use theirs, and obey all the traffic laws. And so you have a right to be there, and it's unfortunate that these harassment incidents take place, and it's obviously unfortunate that people aren't really watching out for them all the time.
It's a kind of a shame, if you allow me just to say it briefly. Brandy will attest that Dare County in the last 2 years in the state senior games, we have won more medals than any other county. That's pretty remarkable because the size of our county compared to some of the metropolitan counties is rather small. We're getting a great reputation, and people are coming into the Outer Banks to ride with us, which is good for our economy. And it's a shame when incidents like this happen. What I'm afraid of, we'll get a reputation of being bad for cyclists, and that will hurt our economy.
Certainly.
Thanks again, Jack.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Okay, and then in response to Al, I mean, certainly it would be the board's discretion to relook at it. Did you have any follow-up?
Well, I actually went every single night except for last night because it just seemed it wasn't that loud. I mean, the first night I went, I couldn't hear anything because the wind was blowing, and it was only when the wind stopped blowing that I could hear someone's like laughter that was sitting outside. But I spoke to Ben a couple of the nights, and he's pretty conscious when it gets loud, and he actually went over there and turned the bass off when the guy was playing out on the deck. So, I mean, he is conscious of the noise. And even here in this room, when Jack is speaking, it goes from 55 to 65, and there's no microphone over there. So 65 is not that loud. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's the direction of the wind that carries it. I mean, I just don't know what to tell you, but I didn't see or hear it being that loud. Sorry? No, I only went on Sundays because I thought it was only the Euro night, but I'll check again on Saturday night as well.
I mean, and I think this year he knew he was coming and he mellowed it out. And like I say, Saturday night, I went there, it was 74, and it never changed. And the police officer came back to my house and read for reading by my truck, and it said 56. I said, well, if you go up on my deck, it's going to be louder. Well, I don't do that. But, I mean, because I'm elevated and they're elevated, you hear it a lot louder. He's standing behind trees, it's blocking it. And like I say, it was 74 when I went down there, he was down there, and it never changed the beat. And you could hear, I mean, you could hear it plain as day at J. Case. If you go down there, when they're playing out on that deck, you can hear it playing today. It's like way loud.
Well, I went down to the end of your street where there was just one more house, I believe, and some bush. I mean,
Yeah.
that's where I went. So, I mean, I'll check on Saturday again. But I'm telling you that I went several Sundays because that's the day you said.
Well, like I say, they mellowed out for a week or so, and now it's going back to original, and.
Okay, because I did go for
Yeah,
3
oh,
weeks in
I
a row.
trust you did.
Okay,
And I appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
I really do.
I
I
do too.
appreciate you looking
it's
into it.
pretty
that
late,
level.
but
Yeah.
I managed.
You get overtime, right?
Thank you, yeah.
That's right.
But if you don't mind doing it one more month and then
I-
kind of reporting
I
back.
c- I
And then
can do
also,
that.
you know, we did speak about this at length during our last meeting, and which was aired and on the other forums. And I have not received any, I don't know if anyone else has received any other comments or, so if anyone is watching this and wants to provide any comments, certainly the board would be interested in hearing if there's any other perspectives out there, if they're hearing this or have concerns of the noise. And in the meantime, if you don't mind going back,
Okay.
we really
On
appreciate it.
Saturday this time.
So, okay, thank you. Okay, moving on in the agenda, actually, we can move all the way to new business. And we have one item under new business this evening. We have Eric Davis here from Surface 678. He'll be doing a presentation on the Baum Track Recreational Development Market Study and Operational Planning. So, welcome.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having us, folks.
That's okay. Get started here.
We'll give us a second, a little technical difficulties here, but we'll get moving. Again, my name is Eric Davis. I'm a landscape architect with Surface 678. We're a firm outside of Durham. Robert Pratt is a project manager in our office. Our design team consists of Mark Bissell, civil engineering. We have Consulticon. They are our economic consultant out of Boston. Unfortunately, he will be available only by phone this evening. Clearscapes is the architect, and we're also working with George Wood, who helped us with the site analysis and the assessment of the site from environmental professionals. Okay, so we'll go ahead and start. This is obviously a picture from the site looking out over the state park, Run Hill. So we talked about the project team.
Yeah, you right, okay.
Thank you. We looked at this as a six-step process. We're about 5/6 of the way through. Initially, we had our kickoff meeting, which started back in March. We met with Greg Moy, Steve Albright, and Sean Murphy. We brought our design team down here. We walked the site. We then took a moment to review the site analysis, but we also included Bob Breas from Consulticon, who participated in part of the discussion with us, and as an economic consultant began to look at the opportunities for bond track in various economic scenarios. As part of this initial site phase, we also met with Bond Track Committee. We then took the data from the site analysis. We took the data from that we began to merge with Consulticon, and as well as the data from the Bond Track and from this town of Kill Devil Hills, and began to formulate design concepts. From there, we moved forward. We had a little more refinement to those design concepts, which we will share with you tonight. And right now, we're at that fifth step. We're presenting to you and looking forward to the September, possibly kicking off for the next phase. Great. Next slide. Robert's going to go over the site analysis for the phase now.
Okay, so as Eric mentioned, back in March, we did our initial site visits down here, and we met with Greg and Sean and the town representatives. And what this is on the screen right now is just a snapshot of, we develop a nice photo library when we visit a site. This is a snapshot of the different photos, the different ecotypes and regions and characteristics of the site that are present out on the Baum Tract. As you can see dunes from the Run Hill in the top left all the way down to interior wetlands, ranging to coastal wetlands, some of that maritime forest where you've got a mix of native vegetation. And then we, of course, we took an opportunity to look at some of the existing facility operations that are running out there. There's the mulching operation that we certainly have to take account for when we move forward. So this is our site analysis. We presented this to the Bomb Track Committee back in early May. What this is, we typically look at both physical characteristics of a site as well as some of the social characteristics. For example, physical characteristics might be wind directions, opportunistic views that we want to take advantage of, inopportunistic views that we want to screen, climate conditions, rainfall, temperature, and of course, we've got wetlands, we've got sensitive ecological areas that we need to be mindful of on site. So we've noted those and identified different ecotones that we want to certainly be mindful of. From a social aspect, we look at connectivity to the community. That's both vehicular as well as greenway, getting pedestrian connectivity into and out of that community. And we begin to explore walking distances. So the larger circles you see are a study of walking distances. Typically a quarter mile might take, at a leisurely pace, is going to be about a 5-minute walk. So we begin to study what you're looking at from one side of the site to the other so we can begin to incorporate that into our design as we move forward. So as I mentioned, we did present this to the Bomb Track back in early May, and we certainly wanted, we asked for their input as well. So this is just, we were very appreciative of that, and it's a helpful tool that we can take to our table when we start integrating this into our design options that it's helpful for us to know what the community members foresee and what they envision happening on the site. So we certainly did take that into account. An additional item that we wanted to consider is off-site parking. So we're going to look at a range of uses on the site. Some are going to require larger parking quantities than others. So when we start to evaluate what we want to do with the parking on-site, we begin to look off-site. What are our opportunities to share with some of these adjacent uses? How can we leverage, for instance, we've got middle, elementary, and high school adjacent. And for part of that year, that's a large parking lot that might be underutilized. So how can we begin to take advantage of that? Additionally, we want to look at, again, greenway connectivity. So how can we tie back to the community? So we've got greenways that come in off Veterans Drive up near the Wright Brothers Memorial off Collington Road, and they go down to Collington Road. So we want to promote that connectivity into our site, and that's something we carry forward, and you'll see later when we get into the design options. So then what we do is we take our site analysis and we began to carry this through and develop what we're calling a site planning matrix. So this begins to study different possible uses that were considered on the table for the site. So what we did is we created a matrix, and the intent is to provide a useful tool that the town can use for evaluation of potential uses on site. We divided this matrix into 5 primary use segments. Those would be active uses, nature-based uses, accessory uses, supportive uses, and what we consider public work uses. And then, like I said, this is a useful tool, so we want this matrix to inform our land use design and options as we move forward. The particular uses that were being evaluated for implementation on the Bomb Track, the actives would be town gathering, pavilion and amphitheater, disc golf opportunity, multi-purpose sports fields. Your nature-based recreation uses are going to be boardwalk and nature preservation, kayak and canoe launch, and then you've got accessory use types. Those are going to include things like fenced dog parks, children's playgrounds, and camping facilities for organized use opportunity. And then in all of these, you're going to have supportive uses that might apply across the board in any design option we come up with. Those would include your restrooms, your parking, and any of your concession type snack bar venues that you integrate into perhaps a pavilion structure or something of that nature. And then across the board, again, we're going to have public work uses. Existing conditions are that we have a mulching facility on site, and we need to take that into consideration as we move forward, and you'll see we've done that as we've integrated these items into our design. Some other uses that were initially on the table were a municipally owned and operated pool, a vehicle impound facility, and then the use of wastewater treatment and spray irrigation on fields. And then, so what we do next is we begin to integrate these and think about what our target audience segments would be as we apply these uses to the site. So audience types might be interested in the following: passive recreation, active recreation, or particular organized sports. There's a dedicated interest in recreational disc golf experience. And then you have those that are interested in preserving and experiencing the natural world or character that would be unique to your Outer Banks environment. All of these will take into consideration both your local residents as well as tourism throughout the year. So what we do next is we start to consider specific physical site considerations that we use as part of this matrix. We look at the acreage or space allocated for a particular use, infrastructure or utility requirements that might be required, the zoning or the compatible use of local or area adjacent uses, the potential for shared use of the allocated space, and then how can we leverage adjacent uses? For instance, the parking, like we talked about, shared parking with an adjacent property. How is the site suitable for a particular use? And then the location within the site or the potential for us to phase that in during the construction process. We also begin to look at market considerations in the local area. Again, what are our target audiences? Is it residents, tourists, or events for a particular use? Whether it's going to serve multiple users, and what is the seasonality of that use? Is there the presence of a regional competitor of that same use? What are going to be the local economic and tourism impacts? What's our quality of life impact going to be, and how's it going to affect your local resident? And then also, when we're permitting a use, you're going to have to deal with either whether it's a difficult or an easy particular use to get permitted and approved for that particular site. And then what are our potential funding sources for this use? We're also going to consider operating and O&M considerations as we move forward. So after construction is done, we've got to keep this thing running. So we're going to look at what are your volume, what are the timing of your vehicular trip requirements generated by these uses that we're considering. What are the parking and/or shared parking opportunities for this? What's going to be your earned revenue potential for a particular use? What are your capital costs order of magnitude? And then what are going to be the yearly operational and/or maintenance cost moving forward once we've constructed a use for you on the property? Additionally, we want to look at personnel requirements. Is a particular use going to drive up the need for added personnel, or is it something that you can take care of with your current staff? And we're also going to look at capital renewal requirements. Is it a use that's going to be going to require a 10-year replacement, et cetera, something along those lines. So I'm going to turn this back over to Eric.
And we've talked briefly about the site analysis, and we talked about the economic analysis. And then there's a third component that I want to share with you too, and that's the civic component. This is a 44-acre site. It contains some amazing beauty. We talked about that in the site analysis. It also contains some economic opportunities for you. So what are these benefits to the community, both in terms of residents and tourists? How can we begin to look at a variety of uses from a civic responsibility that provide opportunities for the wide breadth and range of the demographics for here in your town? So we begin to start with what we call a word diagram, and these words are gathered from the meetings, they're gathered from the conversations, and we begin to put those on the land and see how they begin to work with our diagrams and our sketches. But at the end of the day, we begin to see what opportunities from a civic perspective. Now, this is going to be a little tougher to measure as we move forward, but it's one of the key opportunities for you with this 44-acre site to really take a look at how people use the site, how they gather, how they support the community, and how they can support each other through this site. And this does look a little bit like chicken scratch, so to speak, but it's how we begin our diagrams and how we begin to formulate and organize by a series of overlays. So as an underlay, we have the site, we have the natural features of the site, we have the wetlands, we have the coastal wetlands, we have the ecotone that's adjacent to Run Hill Park, and we began to do a series of bubble diagrams. And these bubble diagrams began to take form in an opportunity for us to put together what Robert had talked about, these various program elements. We've taken that list of program elements and divided it into a series of 3 different schemes we're going to share with you. This is the first scheme, and this is a sportsplex. This is an opportunity to look at a variety of uses within this park site. So if we want to start from the entry, you can see we provided an entry road that comes in. There's a small road that breaks off and heads to the first oval. That first oval diagram represents what's required for the town and its mulching facility. There are certain setbacks required from the residential area. There's certain setbacks required from buffers, and that's one of the first opportunities that we can get that located on site. The main road would continue around it and head towards the larger parking lot. As you can see, we have a smaller parking lot associated with the yellow diagram area. Now, as part of this conversation, we brought in another consultant. Jay Pontier is a golf disc professional. He has set up numerous courses throughout the state of North Carolina, and he was kind enough to come down here and to walk the site. And I got to mention, you know, it was about June, so I guess your crop of ticks and snakes was pretty healthy at that time. And I asked him if he was worried about that, and he said no. He was a ex-Armed Force member, so he wasn't worried about those guys. But he did come down here mid-June, walk the site, and begin to assess what we can do in terms of disc golf. And he thought we could provide, at a minimum, 9 holes, and that's what you see with this diagram here. And his sort of rule of thumb is to apply 1 acre per hole. All right, so you begin to take out the wetlands, you take out the coastal wetlands as well, and you're left with, you know, plus or minus 18 acres of fairly developable land. What do I mean by developable? Usable land. All right. You can see the purple area in the center. That's your wetland. That's your interior wetland. You've got the coastal wetlands on the outside. But then you've got an opportunity. And we met early on in this process with a couple of students from the high school. In our first meeting, they talked about wanting to be able to have a field space that they could go to in the wintertime and play. That the high school, while it provided fantastic athletics, there's only so many times a year you can actually use those fields, right? Just because you begin to degrade them, the natural turf, the warm season grass goes dormant in the wintertime, so the roots aren't very stable, and it's hard to get a cool season grass to grow down here. These are 2 synthetic turf fields, plus or minus 100 yards by 70. They would provide opportunities for 2 high school soccer games. You can see a matrix on the right. So you can have up to 4 U8 teams out there on each field. You can have high school lacrosse out here as well. And then located between these 2 fields is a pavilion structure. You can use opportunities for food, for venue, for gathering. And just also nestled between the 2 fields is for those families that have kids that sort of span the gamut, right? So you've got a couple of kids that are playing sports, but then what do you do with the 2 to 5-year-old while you still want to watch your other child play? So there's a playground nestled in between those 2 sports fields. So that area is concentrated. We've kept off the wetland. As you move around the site, there's a series of pathways and trails that guide you out to the coastal wetland area. There's an overlook that takes advantages of the beautiful sunsets over the sound. It could be provided. It's almost like an outdoor porch. So we could have camps and teaching facilities out there. And you can see the dashed green line sort of transecting the site. That's a possible future greenway connection that begins to reach north to Bermuda Bay and hopefully to the south through Run Hill and all the way down through Nags Head Woods. It's a potential connection. A series of boardwalks that are in the teal color with overlooks along that edge of the sound. It's some fairly deep water in there, so it would make it very easy for kayaks and canoes to portage off that edge. So now you've got a combination of both active and passive represented in this first park scheme. Next slide. The second scheme, you can see that we kept the road in the same location, connecting up to the existing road. We've got the greenway adjacent to that. We still have the plus 9 holes of disc golf that encircle the wetland area adjacent to Bermuda Bay. We've got our parking lot facility, plus or minus about 100 cars. But then we began to look at an opportunity for a town green, a town gathering space that could provide for food festivals, for music. It's about 1.5 acres, so it's not too large. And as you can see, the footprint is not taking up all your site. So there, again, we've got a pavilion structure, we've got the playground, we've got an opportunity for larger fields in that area, which will give us pickup football, flag football, impromptu soccer as well, but then also be able to host events, music, art, and theater, about 1.5 acres. You can see that we still have the outdoor porch, nature center, the greenway trails and pathways, as well as the perimeter boardwalk system along the Sound. And the next slide, we talked about having 9 holes. What Jay recommended was that we have a minimum of 18 holes. That golf disc enthusiasts really want to come out and play a full round of golf. So how do we begin to find the other 9 holes located around the site? And as you can see, sort of those spring green colors begin to look at opportunities that we could grab and then play disc golf in and around the area. So you could park at the park, you could do the 9 holes in those first 2 schemes, and then move throughout the other areas of the site that would be available for disc golf, making up the other plus or minus 9 holes. There is some walking associated with this, but that's a very healthy way to get around the disc golf. And Jay walked this site, including these green areas here, and thought we could find additional holes in and around the site. All right, and then the final option is Design Scheme C. That has all 18 holes, and that's the yellow area that you see on the site. The wetland has been reduced, so we would have some impacts. That would be for clearing and adjusting of sight lines for the holes. We got a parking space that's probably plus or minus 25. We provided for the mulching facility. There's a walkway and walking trails around that take you back out to the coastal wetlands. We also have the nature porch, that screened-in porch for opportunities for summer camp, as well as a connection to the greenway to the north. So those are the basic 3 schemes. They show a variety of opportunities and uses, as well as a variety in terms of the disc golf opportunities too. Next slide, please. And then this is an opportunity. As a landscape architect, we see things at Google Earth, so to speak. But then how do we begin to look at things in 3 dimension? And this is a montage. This is a perspective of what could happen, in particular for scheme number 1. So basically, you'd be standing at the pavilion structure, having some lunch. Looking out to your left is the playground structure. It's adapted to the coastal part of Carolina, lots of ropes and swings. There's a perimeter trail along and around the synthetic turf field, and then you have an opportunity for sports fields in the center there. Next one, please. This is another perspective that we wanted to share with you that would be emblematic of the second scheme. So this is the town gathering opportunity. We've got a series of pathways and trails, food festival, food truck rodeo, central lawn. It's not too large, but it could accommodate a few thousand people. A lower area there overlooks the amphitheater and shade structure. And then in the background, you can take advantages of both the celebration of seasonal opportunities, 4th of July, and then you've got the sunset that's going to be back there as well. And then emblematic of all 3 schemes is the opportunity to get out to the water. We think that the coastal edge of the Sound is just spectacular. It's got a rich variety of vegetation and wildlife, and providing boardwalks and opportunities for you to get out, to get to the Sound, whether it's walking, biking out there along the greenway, or perhaps even taking your kayak and canoe out there for portage. So that would be in all 3 schemes. All right, so those were the graphics. Now we're down to the numbers here. We're going to talk about some of the market analysis. And this is the estimated capital cost. So option A, sports fields and pavilion. This is a cost opinion. Now, we've done some early schematics. This is the master plan phase. And as we begin to move forward with the design options, that contingency starts to decrease. So with this fee here, you'll see a 20% contingency. That's the buffer for unknowns as we begin to flesh out the details in terms of the design. So we're looking at around $4,358,460 for option A. Option B is the town gathering pavilion and stage. The cost opinion is just under $3 million. Option C, 18-hole disc golf course on site with a nature and porch. Cost opinion is around $1.5 million. Now that includes a variety of options as seen here. We've evaluated and analyzed these different types of uses, reviewed them in a cost comparison. But what does that mean in terms of long-term maintenance associated with these? And that depends on the elements that are placed within the park, how much maintenance associated with each one of these. So the town gathering park, pavilion, multi-use sports fields, disc golf, boardwalk, canoe, kayak launch, nature trails, the camping facility, children's playground, parking lot, infrastructure and utilities. We're looking at an annual maintenance cost between $70,000 and $95,000. And then we're looking at disc golf as an annual maintenance, about half of that, around $35,000. That's to keep the fairways clear, that's to keep the boardwalk up, and to keep everything operational. Summary of site evaluation. This is an opportunity to think about the other impacts that could happen in terms of landscape and wetlands, the traffic patterns and impacts to the local infrastructure, and then the parking requirements. Early on, Robert did an analysis about the adjacent parking and leveraging the school parking areas. But is there an opportunity to also use on-site parking too to help with that? Summary of market evaluation, both in terms of residents and tourists. Market segments, are we going to look at a broad niche of appeal with a variety of uses? Or is it going to be more of a niche audience, say for instance just the disc golf? Is it on-site? What's the number and density that we'd like to see on-site? What's sort of the carrying capacity of the site? Patterns of use. How do we leverage some of the shoulder seasons? And then how do we provide an opportunity for inclusion? An inclusion that provides uses for a wide range of ages and demographics. Summary of operating evaluation, capital cost, operating cost, the earned revenue to the town. And this is what Consulticon is really focusing on, this earned revenue to the town. As we begin to hone down on one design, they will then be able to take that information and look at the opportunity for revenue back to the town. Market revenue to be determined based upon option selection. So what's the secondary? We talked about earlier on the biking opportunities, how bikers come down here and they like to bike. What are opportunities available that would come down and use this park, whether for sports facilities, for food festivals? It also could be for disc golf tournaments that could be hosted here as well. So there's a variety of opportunities that would be sort of secondary impacts to the economy that this park could provide. And I know that there's a lot of information that was presented. We'll certainly do our best to answer questions about the market analysis. Bob Reyes is our lead on that, but we can certainly respond to questions. And if we don't have the answer for you tonight, we'll certainly find it and get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Comments?
Have you guys thought of doing some of the parking with maybe underneath, like say the restrooms facility? Sort of like they have at the Black Pelican, that the restaurant's actually raised up and there's more parking below. I mean, that I hear helps with solving parking issues with building size and square footage.
Well, we think due to the size and also adjacent parking areas, we think we've provided for about 100 parking spaces in the park itself. And then plus, if we go back to that earlier slide, I think it's like number 7 perhaps. It would be, yeah, slide number 7. You can see there's a lot of parking adjacent to the site. So we think we can mitigate the parking fairly easily by using more off-site parking and then holding the parking number to about 100 within the site. Now, in terms of opportunities for parking, there might be really good chances that we should think about using permeable pavers. We should think about the water table. We should think about stormwater as it is associated with parking, using green swales and vegetated swales to help clean the water, especially with the proximity to the wetland. There'd be a really simple story to tell in terms of education, especially with the adjacencies to the school and the natural environment. But I think at this time, I think the parking issue we could solve fairly easily.
I know that the gentleman that you said, the golf expert that came down and walked the site and provided the recommendations about an acre per hole, and that preferably it would be an 18-hole course. I noticed in your study you talk about the closest course here to here is in Elizabeth City, 52 miles away. What is the size of that course? Do you know?
I don't know offhand, but I assume it's an 18-hole course. It's 9 holes? Okay. It's a 9-hole course. We have, Jay recently did a course for us in Holly Spring. It's an 18-hole course. We probably have half a dozen in the Triangle area, and I think there's one in Greenville as well, and I think there's some two in Greenville, and then there's some in Norfolk as well, too. Virginia Beach. And those are 18-hole courses. So there's an enthusiasm and threshold that we find in terms of providing the full 18 holes.
Questions, comments? Any questions or comments for?
None yet.
Have you either either of you had much experience with other facilities, municipal type facilities that are able to get sponsorships? Some of the things we had talked about in the past was a simple one would say be the dog park, and there's any number of ones that are paid for in their entirety by I'm just off the top of my head, PetSmart, or there's one I know that has a veterinarian clinic that sponsors the dog park, and there's also some of the other facilities that we might have. There's sponsorships available for those. In addition to maybe some grants we could get locally or from the state. Have you had much experience with that kind of a sponsorship thing?
Yes, absolutely. We installed a dog park very similar to what you were talking about at Briar Chapel, which is in Chatham County. And it has a weekend day. It's sponsored by the local veterinarian. So she comes out and does clinics on the weekend, and she's able to put a banner up at the dog park. We're working with the town of Cary right now, and there is a charge associated with use of the dog park in the town of Cary that have a card key access. And then in terms of disc golf, what Jay was able to do in Holly Springs was pretty remarkable. So he obviously had to charge for materials, but he has such a good following in terms of disc golf players that he was able to get the labor provided for free and donated. So there's opportunities to get the enthusiasm from the community behind a lot of these program elements. So in terms of disc golf and dog park, and then in terms of the Len Bradley at the town of Holly Springs, he's their Parks and Rec director. Fantastic foresight. He was able to begin to take advantage of installing the synthetic fields we did for Parish Womble. He made them large enough that would accommodate a very wide range of ages and skill sets. He was able to get grants from playground companies. So we got the playground structure installed at basically half price because he was able to use grants. But more importantly, what he was able to do was he was able to work with the local hotels up in Holly Springs and then organize events, whether it was through lacrosse, field hockey. He reached out to Ultimate Frisbee. So his fields that he constructed were busy year-round. So he was able to take advantage of the local community recreational infrastructure and would be a really good resource to speak with. And I would encourage, I can certainly reach out to Lynn, but he had a lot of foresight and was able to take advantage of grants and to know the community in terms of recreational opportunities that they wanted. And that park is busy from, they basically installed lights, so they shut the lights off at 10 o'clock at night, and they go all day long.
Yeah, I know we've had quite a commitment from local enthusiasts that would be willing to help with the labor. We probably wouldn't, if they all come through, we probably wouldn't have to pay for much in the way of labor. So we'd just be worried about having it laid out properly and having the equipment. Another thing, some of the research that I've done, there's one particular town, I can't think of it off the top of my head, and I printed the thing, but they actually have their, within their larger park, they have a pavilion, and they sold the naming rights to it. And they also have a playground that they sold the naming rights to that's And it's not really complicated. The contract they had is only like 6 or 7 pages long. It's pretty simple. And there's a time limit on it, 10 or 20 years, whatever it is. And based on the cost estimates that we've seen for this, there's no doubt in my mind we're going to have to be looking at some of these resources.
No, absolutely. I think
You know,
that's
volunteers, grants, naming rights, sponsorships, whatever we can do to possibly get some of this stuff done in a reasonable amount of time. We won't expect to see any of it in months or maybe even some in years, but I want to be careful not letting the numbers scare anybody off, because this isn't something that we thought about doing tomorrow. It's
Right.
something that well, there are some of these things may not be done for 10 years,
Sure.
depending on the availability of the things that I mentioned. So I'm glad to hear you say that you've seen those kind of things happen in other places, and I'm sure there's many more than the ones you mentioned.
Right. We just also, we're speaking with a project we're working on in Raleigh. It's more of a nature preserve, but they just received a PARTIF grant for renovation of a farmhouse that could be used as an artist studio. So there's opportunities, and what we'd like to do is obviously work with Bob Reyes and come up with a list, a comprehensive list of funding opportunities and sources for you, and provide that to Greg and contact
That'd be great.
information. Be
Thank
glad
you.
to.
Any other questions or comments?
One of the things that we had discussed at previous meetings was potentially doing something on a smaller scale to start with. Has that been taken into consideration, whether it's an option D or further down the line, but where we start with a smaller disc golf course or a dog run and then move into having more permanent facilities?
I think that's a great opportunity, and what I would like to ask of you is to take a look at these design options. Find out what really rises to the surface for you. And I think the wonderful thing about this is it understands what you can do without precluding something in the future, right? So you get a sense of scale, how much parking is associated with it, what size structure you would like with it, where the dog park could go, where the camp facility could go, where the boardwalk could go. So you could begin to phase these plans off once you've selected sort of the kit of parts that you'd like to see installed out there. And that's the wonderful thing about having the opportunity to do a master plan. It allows you to pick and choose based on the funding sources available to you, without precluding or stopping something in the future that you really thought or you're really excited about but just couldn't afford right away. And I really respect the foresight that you have, because it's often easy to go out and do things really quick. But my dad, you know, I guess you would say they call it sustainability today, but my dad just called it common sense. You know, when you do something, you do it right, and when you have the funding for that, then you take that next step. So it's really important that you have that foresight to do things right, do them well, and then take the next step forward, because the community will see that. They'll measure that. They want to see that opportunity taken advantage of. They want to be able to go out and use it, and then they want to know it's done with quality and with care.
Yeah, I think what you just said, the community sees, if we move forward with a couple of the more modest things that it may be affordable in some way with some additional funds, and people get to see that things are going on, and there's some excitement, and then things build from there. I think that's something that could generate public interest, and which would help us out a lot if people
Absolutely.
are really interested in doing something, because they're much more willing to do it then.
Absolutely. I would agree.
And I think the one way that I could see maybe going forward with this is to maybe, as Travis suggested, look at this on a much smaller scale. And I think one of the things that I keep hearing over and over and over is the disc golf. And I think that's the thing that's kind of rising to the top. That's what I at least that's what I hear the most. I don't know about y'all, but that's what I hear. And maybe the dog park. And if we could do something such as maybe a PARTIF grant, which has a match to it, but the match could be the land. And if we could do that with little or no cost to the citizens, because that's also the thing that I hear the most, is that I don't know that we want to burden y'all anymore at this point. If we could do that and start there, that might be something that I could be amiable to. And then we could go from there and at least start with a plan, and not, because this is a little bit much to digest right this moment. But if we could do something like that, and where we have grant funding, and we're not coming off the top with 1.5 or 4.3 million dollars, and then if it has a smaller yearly cost, maybe that's something that we can deal with.
Okay, well, what would you, it was a lot of information to digest.
Yes, very thorough.
And probably need some more time to spend with it. We want to have, put this on the agenda just to follow back up at our next meeting to have further discussion.
Yeah, and I'd like to, maybe not necessarily before our next meeting, but I would like to have our committee back together again. And take some time to have them take a look at this, and if possible, maybe we can get some copies of it. Because I think a lot of those are going to be the ones that are going to be the ones that are enthusiastic, and some of them are going to be the ones that are going to be doing the volunteering. So,
well, it'd be nice to, I mean, basically, well, correct me if I'm wrong, board members, please. It seems to be there's consensus to look at this smaller approach and have a phased, some type of phased approach.
yes, yes.
I think, given our
Yeah,
financial
obviously.
circumstance, we have to
We
do
don't
that.
have $4 million to do it. We'll have to be phased, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the input from your, going back to the bomb track study committee would be valuable in that, and then also looking at, I know what Surface is proposing is to kind of hone in on one of those type of, or something similar to what's been presented with A, B, or C, use that as a guide, and then figure out if the golf course and the dog run is part of that initial priority, then what does that look like based on A, B, or C as a
Yeah, and
model?
most importantly, I think, is input from the community, not only just the people over here, that hopefully some of them will spread the word, but when people hear about, a lot of people have heard about it when they hear about this meeting or they watch it on the YouTube or whatever, they'll have a lot more information now, and then they may therefore be more enthusiastic, or maybe not enthusiastic, either way, and at least give us some input, because the committee's there for that, but the committee advises us, but we'd like people to advise them and us from the public, so.
Can you get information and share with the board on the part of grant?
Yes.
That would be great. Because the staff may already have that, but if you could share that with us, that would be great.
As a member of the committee, can I ask one question? What various things would there be that would cause revenue to come back to the town? Obviously, the course, but are there any other things that I may not be thinking of, perhaps concessions or other things?
Might be a good question for you, gentlemen.
Sure. Bob Reyes will connect up with the Consulticon. But the things that rise to the surface are what you mentioned. There's opportunity for sports to come in. There's opportunity for disc golf tournaments to be hosted here. There's opportunity for vending. There's also opportunity for canoe and kayak launch rental that could be part of this. There's opportunities. We were out at the site this morning, and they were using the adjacent facility, the rope climbing facility. So it looks like there's summer camps that might be able to take advantage of this. I would think that the schools could be able to take advantage of this as well. And then we talked about the dog park. We talked about opportunities for revenue there, or a sponsorship and a partnership with that. Those are a few things that sort of come to my mind. The food festival that could be hosted here as well. You've got some fantastic chefs. Actually, you got one in the room here. So you're not short on food, and just fantastic food and opportunities for people to gather. So I think that would be another nice way.
Yeah, I think with a lot of the things you mentioned, the tournaments and such, they all provide user fees to the facility. And sometimes it's just to cover costs, and other times it gives some money for future maintenance and such, so that we can continue to do that. So not only just selling things in the form of concessions, but the user fees are fairly common in this type of situation.
Yes, exactly.
Right, the dog park in Kitty Hawk also charges a user fee, so not only do you have to have your dog registered, but it charges a yearly fee.
Do you,
So
do you know
gives
how much that is?
I want to say it's $35. I don't know, I don't have my dog registered there, but I want to say it's through Parks and Recreation, so. And that was a part of grant that built, that was a part of grant that built that.
Cool.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thank you, gentlemen, very much.
Thank you so much.
for your presentation, the
Appreciate it. Very
information.
thorough.
Well, thank you. You have a wonderful piece of property, and it looks like you have some fantastic opportunities here, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next item on the agenda this evening is the Commissioner's agenda. Commissioner Midget, you have anything this evening?
Can we get some pictures? Yes, please. So, I was riding around this past couple weekends, and I see a lot of trash overflowing from trash cans on the beach road and in between the beach road and 158. And I just, when I thought of it, when I saw them and I took the pictures, I did forget a couple times and missed some, but it seems to be pretty bad in July and August.
Continue with my
Yeah.
grabbing some photos.
So I just wanted to, I spoke with Greg and Steve Albright on the phone this morning, and they were telling me about the size of the house and how many bedrooms it has correlates to how many trash cans that they must have, but it looks like a lot of these are, you know, still overflowing. So I was wondering if you guys want to look at maybe changing it so they have to have more trash cans. I mean, we don't want to be like Nags Head with loads of rollouts all down the street, but I mean, there's quite a amount of trash overflowing.
Yeah, because they are going to have to get out of the truck to do that,
Yeah.
right?
Or if the wind blows it, because it's, you know, too heavy, it's going to butt all in the grass.
Or the dogs that
Yeah.
aren't supposed to be loose.
And I only got a couple of them. I mean, there's loads of them, and I just didn't think about at the time to take the pictures.
Ugh.
Yeah, no, I've seen exactly what you're taking pictures of, so.
Well, you can see, I noticed on the beach road the other day, it was a large house, there's no doubt it was a large house. But the number of cars that were parked there, I think there was like 16 cars. And it couldn't have been more than a 5 or 6 bedroom house. And every one had a clam on top, and
Sure,
you know,
sure.
they're just, I can't imagine by the end of the week what their trash might look like. I'm glad you didn't do my house.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about, for the purpose of moving this discussion forward, sending this item to the Community Appearance Committee and letting them work with staff and exploring some ideas and bringing back some recommendations to us, one of which could be
Yeah.
looking at
Uh,
what our requirement is?
They also told me that it's possible that the people, when they change over, they don't take the trash out, and then the new people get in there with a full trash can. So it's could also come down to the real estate companies be
Yeah.
responsible for seeing that these trash cans get taken out.
Well, it's certainly something that, with that committee, if, you know, maybe they could do some, actually, interviews with some of the property
Sure.
management companies to hear their perspective of this problem, because I'm sure they don't want guests pulling up to this, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
But, you know, some of it, I think there needs to be a fair amount of research, so to speak, looking into this,
Sure.
to look at what the possible solutions will be, and also what are the possible implications. I'm not opposed to looking at that, but I wouldn't want to just make a decision on saying X number of bedrooms have to have this extra trash can, because, I mean, some of our year-round residents may fall into that, you know. So I think we just need to really look at this issue. But I appreciate you bringing it up, because I think we need to. I've noticed this driving around too. So,
Yeah.
are you guys okay with that recommendation? We'll send it
Certainly, I
to
think that's a
Community
great
Appearance Committee.
recommendation.
Yeah, and ask them to look into this and bring back recommendations to us.
With the consideration that the recycle bin might actually fall into that and make a consideration as well.
Yeah.
I realize that makes a difference year-round, but still,
Mm-hmm.
some people might opt for that.
Okay. Great. Thank you for
Yep.
bringing that up.
That's
Anything
all.
else this evening?
That's all, I think.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Commissioner Ackerman?
Nothing tonight.
Okay. Commissioner Reba?
I apologize for missing the last meeting. I did read through the minutes, and but I will report that my daughter's Little League team did take second in state, so it was
All
very
right.
well
Yay.
worth missing.
Great. Yeah.
So it was a long trip, but it was well worth it.
Great. That's exciting. Yeah. Well done, Sydney and team.
Yes. I can honestly tell you I did not know that there was that much further west from Asheville. Franklin was where I was in Franklin, North Carolina, and I have family in Asheville, and I did not know there was that much part of the state that it went. I could not stay with my family in Asheville. We were an hour and a half the other side of Asheville, and there was still more part of the state further than Franklin. So I was like, I've seen lots of North Carolina. So, but it was fun.
Mayor Pro Tem Hogan?
Yeah, I just want to thank Michael again for checking on that noise stuff.
Yeah.
I appreciate it very much. And also, I'd like to mention that last week, in conjunction with the Dare County Parks and Rec, there was a junior lifeguard camp this past week, Monday through Friday. Our granddaughter, Brianna's 13, she participated in it, and she was very impressed with it. And they'd like to do it again next year. Dave Elder's here, and he knows some about it, of course, more than some. They'd like to do it next year and maybe make it a 2-week, second week optional kind of a thing. And it's something that she'd like to be a lifeguard when she get, like your daughter's a lifeguard. You know, she'd like to be a lifeguard when she gets old enough, and this is very good training for that. She learned CPR, and they learned the Heimlich maneuver, which they don't call it that anymore. They call it something else for some reason. But and she learned a good bit of first aid, and obviously in addition to swimming. They had to rescue each other, and they liked that a lot. Chokeholds and all that. It was really nice, and she really enjoyed it. So we're looking forward to next year and hopefully expand on it.
Great.
Oh, I forgot one thing.
Okay.
The National Night Out, that was wonderful. Wanted to commend the staff on that, police department, fire department, all of you that were involved. It was great. Thank you.
It's Officer McDowell that plans that, really does a lot of the heavy lifting. Yeah, and I saw her that night and told her thank you, but if you'll please pass that along as well. She does a great job pulling it all together, and then everyone coming out to support her.
And in addition to that, Kildare Hills is also doing a day camp for children this week. And I've not had a chance to talk to my daughter yet, but she's enrolled in that. And I know she had a great time today, but I haven't had a chance to talk to her yet. So I want to thank y'all for doing that as well.
And the auxiliary too for the National Night Out. The auxiliary did a great job. Jerry and all his buddies and women.
I think you ran out of hot dogs again. They
Very
were
well
they were very good.
Okay, I have 2 items this evening under the mayor's agenda. The first is, and I sent out an email that I would be bringing this up this evening about the items on the beach overnight. You know, I don't know what it is, and this, what we are going to be discussing is the same issue that Nags Head has now taken up, Kitty Hawk, it's come up and will be at their meeting. It's a very odd phenomenon this year, and this is basically people coming out with their tents and chairs and kayaks and umbrellas and leaving them out on the beach overnight. And it hasn't been an issue just in our town, and it's never been an issue like it has this summer. You know, you don't have to scroll through many Facebook pages to see someone commenting on how unappealing it is. It poses significant safety issues. You know, if the tide comes up and you've got all this debris there, I mean, it's concerning. We had a citizen who was walking at night who ran into one of these items and got a cut on her. So I mean, you don't think about, you know, you may think about it from the perspective of it's lazy, it's not attractive looking, it's unappealing, but it truly does pose safety concerns. When it was brought to our attention, I will say and thank the town staff for responding so quickly. We don't currently have an ordinance on the book to address this. And back in early July, when it was brought to, I know, Mary's attention, the town's attention, and I was getting Facebook messages from out-of-town people, actually, who just knew me from back home that vacation here. Mary and team and company responded really quickly by coming up with a tagging program, and you all received the email on this. Dave is here tonight and can speak to this because his staff, immediately responded to help out with this. And basically, these tags, we're starting to, Dave's crew, we're putting them on things that were left behind, which pretty much says don't leave anything behind when you leave for the day. And it explains, why not? What are the concerns? And the chart in front of you shows basically the decline since the tagging program was put in place. It shows a decline. I don't know if we have that to be able to put up. Probably not. A decline in those items.
Got it, but I can't put it up.
Gotcha. It's okay.
Since the tagging, so it does show. It does show that that it's having. You'd like to think that it's having an impact. I will tell you, when this first kind of came to such a head in early July, the pictures, and we shared those. I mean, it looked like Tent City out there, so people understand the nature of the problem. People were hooking, 6 to 8 of these tents up. The tents were put into big, however many gallon buckets with sand to mount them, and that was being left overnight. And then there's other pictures where people had kayaks left overnight and umbrellas and
sailboats,
10 chairs. And, one particular night, just on our beaches, there were 105 tents, 219 chairs, 61 umbrellas that were left overnight. Nags Head, when I was talking with their mayor, and telling him about, I can't believe there were 105 tents, he said they counted 345 tents on their beaches. So, it's a significant issue this summer. People are like, why this summer? What's the difference? I think part of it, this is my opinion, I haven't done any scientific research on this, I think part of the reason is the price of these tents has dropped so much that it's really easy to go buy a $60 tent and put up, and when you're spending that, they may buy it when they get down here and not care to take it home, so they may not care what happens to it. Same thing with $5 beach chairs and, $10 umbrellas. That may contribute to part of it. The other is, they may see their person beside them doing it. No, great, I don't have to lug this back at the beach. They're doing it, maybe it's okay. So I think it shows promise that the tagging system is making an impact. The reason I wanted to bring it up for discussion tonight is because we don't have an ordinance, I think we need to keep a close eye on this and see, is this really going to mitigate enough of the risk or enough of the issue by having the tagging system, or are we going to need to look at some type of ordinance to provide some teeth and backbone if it doesn't mitigate the issue? Dave, I appreciate you being with us, and we would love to hear from you, your staff experience maybe with the tagging system, how that's going, and what you all think about the effectiveness.
The very first day that I was involved in tagging, the only time I got stopped was by people who were there to appreciate what we were doing. We were trying to make a step forward. The majority of the tents that are coming out they're basically big place cards for people to mark out an area. And sometimes when you drive down the beach and you see chairs that are left out, they're left out in a sprawling arrangements for people to mark out an area. So year after year, as these tents have become, as you said, more affordable, they did it, so maybe we'll do. And then they start to tie them together, etc. And our visitors everybody very, very often these people are renting the same houses year after year after year. And our patrons are happy to see us and happy to do what they can to get along. And it gets really dodgy when you throw the weather element into it. 25-knot wind, and you've seen these things flopping around the beach like a cockroach on their back, when you have that kind of wind underneath them. And then people tend to walk away. And the problem that Steve has, the problem that I have is, how long is something abandoned before it's abandoned? And When is a piece of debris, and when is it somebody else's? So it's an issue for us. And earlier this year, when you passed that ordinance for us, giving us the wherewithal to ask people kindly to move their things and then inform them that they need to move their things, that's very helpful. And we can do this. People are very willing to comply. I'm not sure. The information campaign, to some degree, I think needs to go into the real estate companies, because most of these things are not walking out from the public accesses. The majority of them, I have another spreadsheet which goes into a spread of where they are, but when we talk to each other in the morning after we've been tagging these items, very often they're in front of rental houses with direct access, and they're trying to mark their territory out. It's been a steady upcreep over the last few years, and it doesn't need to get nasty, and we're not trying to get nasty with people about this. And what I've been trying to do as much as anything else is talk to people about, what can we do to try to help you help us to mitigate this problem with you as stakeholders, because you're down here for a week or two or whatever your period of time is. And there are several different answers on that. And it really comes to the will of the board. What do you want to do, and what's the step? What the end goal is a clean beach that you walk over the dune line and you see nothing but sand and water, and a few of my lifeguard stands, of course. But that's the goal, and the question is how far do we need to go into that goal? This is done quite well. I think the first day we tagged, we had over 123, something like that, 123, 125. And on Sunday, I think we were 16. And a lot of the ones that were above the 16 were people that had brought their things right out on the beach, and they were starting their morning. And you can kind of tell the difference. At 8 o'clock, people were starting to come out in numbers. So they're staking out their area. Yeah, this is mine. And that's part of the process.
How have people responded to the tags? What's been their interaction with staff? Are they?
I put the tags out there every day, and I never see them again. They get ripped off as soon as the people come out on the beach, and rarely ask us anything about them.
And are you finding, because I know we're doing, are you guys able to tell, let's say you tag something today, are you able to tell if that same thing was there tomorrow? And are you having some that just are belligerent and they don't care about the tag?
Well, since there's no real weight behind it, it's please, help us to, what is that? Throw that away. I don't know. I've gone so far as to talk to people who are setting things up and give them a card and say, this is what we're trying to do. This is what we're trying to achieve. And they said, oh yeah, we really like the look of the beach in the morning or in the afternoon. So I don't know. There are a lot of stakeholders in this. A lot of people who are after clean beaches and sight lines and photographers and people who are activists in different areas. So there's a lot of different hands kind of coming together on this. So I don't see any real issue going somewhere with it, but the question is how far do you want to go with it? You have different models from Corolla south where there have been some harangues on the beach about this stuff. People get quite upset when it was there and it's not now, and who did it, and what is my responsibility if I'm the one removing that item? And I'm sure Mary's received phone calls in the past about tents that have moved around the beach at night, and who did it. And the fingers are often pointed at the lifeguards, and I promise we weren't the ones that did it. And it's the night crew. Night shift goes out there and they move things around all the time. So there's also a crime element, things happening out there. A lot of things happen on the beach at night, and it's a good thing it's dark because nobody wants to see them.
Right. Thank you. Well, and I think you all probably received in your packet. I mean, for example, when you talk about what's out there, and there's other towns like us, Nags Head, that's looking into this but hasn't adopted anything formally. You've got Duck, who has a very strict policy. Anything left after 5 p.m. is considered debris, and then the town has the right to remove it. They pick it up. I talked to their mayor. I can't remember if it was 12 a night or something is what they're averaging now, but I mean, it used to be a big issue there. It's not any longer. I don't know about how they're communicating, but communicating that message with their ordinance would be interesting, especially
I think they
it's
do.
not
They have
beach
a tag-
access.
They have a tag system.
They have a tax,
also.
and I wonder if they're doing an advanced communication through the rental homes, because that's a great idea. I mean, that is where these are coming from. Being that Nags Head and Kitty Hawk are both experiencing this same issue, I do think it would make good sense to consider trying to work, if we were looking at adding some teeth and creating an ordinance, to try to do something maybe congruent with those other two towns, if they would be willing to. And if that's something that you would like me to follow up with their mayors and see if there's interest in doing so, and trying to come up with, if we are looking at putting an ordinance in place versus that start, I think the nice thing is to start with a tag, even if you are putting an ordinance in place, to give someone the opportunity to say, oh, maybe I didn't know that, take their stuff with them the next time. But if you do have those that are just being defiant, which apparently we do, then it gives us some teeth to do something with that. But if you all would like me to do some legwork and discussion with the other mayors, I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to see an ordinance just to have it in case we want to decide to vote on it next time.
There's several issues with this. I mean, there's the first come, first serve issue, because that's the only way to truly be fair with it. I mean, because obviously that's the reason people are doing this, because they want to be first even though they're not really first. So that's the obvious reason some people are leaving their stuff out there. The safety factor is huge, and that's the reason this probably got started. And then you have the environmental factor. I mean, and that's, I've been contacted by the Nest people who tell me that they will be glad to write letters or come talk or do whatever they need to do to tell me and us why that these things don't need to be on the beach because of the nesting of the turtles. So there's lots of reasons why this doesn't need to happen, and if this doesn't work, and it's a lot of work for this to happen, but I think if we were to do an ordinance, and I think once things start not being there, I don't think it takes long for that to stop.
That's right.
Honestly.
Yeah, I think we should communicate with the rental people, the rental agencies, and the condominium units that are on the beach, and let them know what we're doing now, and they can get it into the literature for next year, so that when somebody comes, when they first go and look at a place or look at it online or wherever, the information will be there, and that way they'll know, so that next year we'll have a better idea of whether or not people are paying attention to that or not.
One of the things that I get a lot on the beach is we have very few ordinances out there. Very few ordinances. You got other beaches. You can't throw a ball. You can have a frisbee. We're not. I don't think anybody on the board is saying that they can't be there. I just leave it as you found it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's really the spirit of what Mary and I have been talking about for quite a while. And the information, I'm very pleased with the level of compliance we got. We're 90% down from start to just with a bunch of wire ties and some paper, some very pretty words on the paper too.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I think. This needs to remain a part of whatever we do, because that is making a difference. I think it's just you have the ordinance for those who won't follow and use common sense.
Absolutely.
But it's going to be like most of our other ordinances. You're not out there trying to chase people down and get them in trouble. It's there to back us up if we have a problem and we have someone that won't be compliant with friendly request.
This is probably the most telegenic problem you're ever going to come up with. The video of the beach with a couple of these things upside down flapping around in the wind. And Mary just shared with me that there's some funding for doing a piece on this, and it doesn't get a whole lot better than this. And John and I have been riding around together, and he's seen the issues we deal with, and the proximity stuff gets pretty close, but at night when they're abandoned, it looks shabby.
It's an issue.
What about the one thing we didn't mention yet is the holes that people dig?
It's
That's really,
dangerous.
especially people that run at dusk or something, or early in the morning.
Or me, when the special word that comes out of my mouth after I'm riding down the beach, and there's a situation that very often we do get called in after hours or before hours, and a big hole like that, it causes me to bounce around the truck a little bit. These are issues we've had. They're safety problems. The critical area for turtle nesting, it all applies with this. So there's so many different issues involved, and I don't think this is an issue that can't be dealt with. It's what the will of the board is.
And you want to be the least invasive that you have to be, but at the same time you want it to be safe. And quite honestly, I mean, it came to my attention by a photographer who was trying to take pictures and couldn't take a picture without one of these things in the picture, and that's kind of sad too. At the same time, when the beauty of the landscape is taken away from, and then finally he just started incorporating it in his pictures. So it's just
and this is another thing. This is also an appearance committee issue. You know, this is
Exactly.
the town is also, it's from high water line to high water line. So you know, that's also part of it. There are many interested parties here.
Well, and I think the potential of a public awareness campaign and whatever it is that's decided, there's probably greater reach again if we were having a consistent message, at least with our neighboring town, you know, whether it's Nags Head or Kitty Hawk or both. We could get a lot more bang for a buck. There are funds through the Government Education Channel to do special pieces, and so certainly they also favor if you're doing collaborative pieces, you have a stronger chance of getting funded. So I think there's potential to look at that from a collaborative perspective to see what we can do. So we'll start that. I mean, I think for the rest of this summer, where we are with this and what the impact has already made is great. I think we continue that, and thank your staff for participating again. Mary, thank you for being so responsive on this. But then we stay on task to make sure that we have plenty of time to do whatever, make our decisions and put in place what we're going to put in place so we can educate and do an awareness campaign prior to whatever it is that we're doing.
real estate companies.
When does the visitor's guide and some of the rental materials start being printed or getting finalized?
Now.
Is it now? Okay. So, I mean, things like the dogs and things like that have been brought up before. All of that is spelled out, at least in the visitor's guide. It'd be nice to have something like this in there as well.
Fortunately, most of them also, you know, even though I guess fewer rental companies invest in the printed guides. I mean, they still put them out there, but a lot of people go online. So once we know what that message is, we could work with rental companies to get those posted online. I know back in my YMCA days when we started a rental program with YMCA memberships, it was a big push for the summer. Come down, get your YMCA membership while you're here. We created magnets that we worked through the rental company and asked them to put on the refrigerator. So that may be part of, especially if we're working collaboratively and we have a consistent message and you're giving a rental company that has houses in, you know, Kitty Hawk, Nags Head, and kind of, you know, if they're putting one magnet that has a message for all three towns, maybe they would be more apt to work with us on doing that.
I will share with you, Mayor, I've had conversation with the manager in Nags Head and Kitty Hawk. Nags Head is going to be looking at a draft ordinance in the very near future that I think we should also look at to do something along, if we're going to do something along the same lines. And speaking with the manager in Kitty Hawk, at this time they are not going to be doing anything, but they're going to sort of see how it plays out. I'm under the impression that their problem isn't as great. Steve would be at those meetings. So we are watching to see what they do also.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So more to come on this in future meetings then. The second item that I wanted to bring up is actually, and Dave, I'm glad you're here because you may want to chime in on this as well. This just came up in my mind from Saturday night. I participated in a bonfire in Nags Head on the beach, an appropriately permitted bonfire with our family. We roasted marshmallows. actually someone in this room was able to obtain the permit, paid the fee that day to get the permit to have the bonfire. And we were out there with several other families. It was a great, just a fun evening. And of course, several of the families, actually every single family that was there lives in Kildable Hills. And of course, Madam Mayor, why can't we do this in Kildable Hills? And I was like, well, it's not allowed in Kildable Hills at this point. We don't have an ordinance to allow it. But it certainly made me think, should we look into this and have a discussion on it? I think there's a great guidebook to follow with what Nags Head is doing. You do have to get a permit. You can only get a permit that day. I don't even know if it's just, I guess whatever day it is, you have to go to the fire department. You pay for that permit.
How much?
$10 maybe. It's
Yeah,
you might know more than I. So I just
they look at there's a wind factor.
Yeah.
They look at the conditions.
They go over your rules of what you
where
need
the
to
fire is
do.
going to be, so that if it isn't, I remember when I used to work there, I dealt with them a
Okay.
fair bit, and the chief I'm sure is going to want to weigh in on this.
Absolutely.
One as well.
And so I'm not. I'm only bringing this to put it on everyone's radar, and Chief, to put it on your radar. I would like to, at a future meeting, have a discussion where we can get some information. Maybe you can read what's happening in Nags Head. We can also see if there's are there any problems. So I'm not trying to make a rush decision to say let's do it, because I personally think it was a lot of fun and want to do it again, because we can drive to Nags Head to do it. But I think it would be worth exploring if you all are open to exploring it.
Yeah, sure.
There's a bit of volunteerism out there already. On Sunday night, there were 2 fires on the beach.
In our town.
Yeah, in our town. And
Obviously, they weren't legal.
I'm sorry, Saturday night. It would have been on Saturday morning. I came.
Right.
And the issue is, good neighbors have good fires, bad neighbors have bad fires. So that's the thing, and it's
Right.
how, not what, that how it's going to be
Right.
put together. But
Okay. Well, Chief, we'll have a follow-up discussion, and then if you guys would be thinking about it, and we'll start asking some more questions, and maybe put this as a discussion item on a future meeting where we have material to review.
Sounds good.
Okay. That's all I have this evening. Town manager's agenda?
No, ma'am.
Town attorney's agenda?
Nothing for you tonight.
Okay. Consent agenda?
Yes, ma'am. 3 items on the consent agenda. The first, the minutes from the July 14th, 2014 meeting. The second is an ordinance enacting and adopting Supplement 13 to the Code of Ordinances for the town. These ordinances presented for board action to adopt the supplement as completed by the American Legal Publishing Corporation. This action reinforces the board's earlier action in adopting the ordinances that comprise this supplement. It's been reviewed and found to be accurate to the board's actions. The third item, budget amendments. The first one is to record access channel grant fundings from applications 9 and 10. And the second is to provide funds for the Casper system, which is for an undercover officers in our police department. And the staff would recommend approval of the consent agenda as submitted.
Thank you. Any questions?
I had a question.
Okay.
All right, so I tried to search on what the Casper system was, and I couldn't find anything. What is it?
Well,
That's what I figured, but I figured there had to be a rule.
Well, the name comes from remember Casper, the friendly ghost.
Right.
It's a device that helps undercover officers, a type of software. And
Okay.
beyond that, I'm going to have to defer to our Casper in the background.
You don't have to say anything, but
Basically, I defer not to say anything on it because it is undercover work that it deals with. But I'd be glad if you come by the office sometime, we could discuss it. I just wouldn't like to put it on TV.
Fair enough.
he'd hate to have to kill you.
Then that would be the friendly ghost.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Any other questions?
That was the only question I had.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion
I'll make that motion.
to approve the consent agenda?
Yes,
Is there a
to approve.
second?
To approve.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, and this is the second time that's set aside this evening for public comment. Same rules apply as the first public comment session. Looks like Eddie's ready, so welcome.
Ready, Eddie.
My name's Eddie Goodrich, as you're well all know by now, I'm sure. Several months back, maybe as much as a year even, I brought up the concept of introducing into the government and institutional zone, which is directly south well, the public, the 40 acres that the town owns is public government and institutional, and the private government and institutional is just NOAA. And what I brought up was the concept of introducing into the ordinance the use of conference centers in hotels, or hotel conference centers, not convention centers. Convention centers are based around retail more than anything else. The conference centers are based around education and work and business. I don't know that we'll ever have a convention center in Dare County anyway, because there's just simply not a way to bring people in here by air, and that's the only way that it'll ever happen, and I don't think we'll ever see that. And of course, they're usually larger. What I'm talking about is 120 rooms, something like that, with probably, I think the convention center, conference center is usually about 40% of that size. So yeah, it was very well received before, and I just kind of let it go for a while. But I think now, given the study on the bomb track progressing as it is, it's probably a good time to bring it back up. And if this board thinks it's a reasonable idea and has credibility, then I will pick it back up and run with it again.
Yeah, I liked the idea when you first proposed it.
Thank you.
Personally.
There are very few places that you can do that. This part of town, or this part of the beach, is dead center. The Wright Brothers Memorial over here, Run Hill Park, the town's 40 acres, all the baseball fields, the football field, elementary school, middle schools. It's the perfect location for Dare County. And of course, we have the benefit of the central sewage, which is, you can hardly do it without it. And I don't know that anybody could have, I don't know if anybody's got enough money to do it on the ocean. And the sound is just as good, or better in some respects.
Great.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
And I would, if I can put my 2 cents worth in on the bomb track.
You can.
There's two things I know that you're going to do, and one is build the boardwalk and some parking to go along with it, and just maybe just clear it out and make it a park, and then you can sit back and think about it. Because those two things, I know the boardwalk will be done. That's one thing for sure.
I agree.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks. Is there anyone else that would like to speak at this public comment time? Anyone else? Okay, thank you. As far as response, we started responding to Eddie already, but there's a lot that's rhyming tonight with that, Eddie. I'm sorry. Anyway, so is that something that, I know you expressed that you're interested in exploring that concept? Well, Eddie to profess called me, and I said, before you start going down a path, see if there's any interest, because if there wasn't interest, it's futile for him to spend money and start looking into this. This is not meaning that we're saying yes, because there's nothing to say yes to. I mean, there's a lot of work that needs to be done to explore this, but if there wasn't a majority will of the board to be willing to look at this, then I wasn't, going to encourage that. So if there is a will to explore this and look into it, and see what he brings and how that may fit with ordinances and zoning and all that, then great. That's what we want to provide. So.
Eddie, I know you had some
Can you
preliminary.
come back up to the podium for us?
I know you had some preliminary plans before, but how big of an area for conference would you be looking at? Or
Greg
could you
can probably answer that question as well as I can, probably better. But given the fact that you would have central sewage, so you wouldn't need to settle outside land for that, you'd have to look at things like parking, obviously, height, which is already in place, and setbacks from residential neighborhoods. Access is a big issue because they're private streets. But I think it could be done on 4 acres, 5 acres, easily. Maybe less.
Greg really can't
Depends on how
respond
far-
because
how
again
high
he
you
has
go.
to see
I
a
know.
plan to be able to
It
respond.
depends on how well.
I'm kind of curious more on not necessarily the overall size of the entire site, but how big of a conference room or conference facility you could potentially do, or is that
It needs to be
undecided?
at least 120 rooms to make it feasible.
Okay.
And I don't know that I can give you an exact number, but let's see. Probably 20,000 square feet at least.
Okay.
Where would
Well, I'll give you an idea. A Harris Teeter or a Food Line is about 25,000 square feet.
And
you would need at least that much, maybe even more.
Where would it go?
They have to be adjacent. There's an association called the International Association
No,
of Conference Centers.
where in Kittleville Hills?
Directly back here in Bermuda Bay, or even perhaps on the town's property. I don't know that that's a great idea, but you can do it.
So are you talking about like the bomb track?
Yes. But basically, not on the bomb track, but south in Bermuda Bay primarily.
Would you have
But
to?
it could be done anywhere.
Would you have to expand the wastewater treatment plant in order to accommodate that?
Not really.
Okay.
And basically, so what this, I mean, these are questions that would, I mean, eventually have to be on a plan and to review.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
The International Association of Conference Centers has certain guidelines. The rooms have to have a working desk. You have to have specific kinds of lights so people can see when they're working. You have to have insulation between the rooms that are conference rooms so that you can't hear the people in the room next door. And you have to have every kind of, there's a ton of electronics in one of them because everybody has computers and everything you can imagine. You have, everything is set up where you can, like this, or even more elaborate. I think 60% of the space has to be for one use, and the other 40% can be for any uses, like 4 different uses, for instance. You have to have separate entrances. It's the same building that connects, and you can go from one to the other, but you have separate entrances and separate names.
Okay.
Sounds like a good
But it can be
idea.
done anywhere in Kittleville Hills.
Okay.
Okay.
That
Great.
was it.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks again, Danny.
All right. Anything else that anyone has this evening? Anyone? Okay, a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good night. Thank you all for being
Thank you
here.
for being here, everybody.